I'd like to welcome everyone to the RCT Human Capital seminar. So this is the fifth time of this year, and it is our great pleasure to have Professor Pedro Carneiro with us today, because Professor is an expert in poverty and education program evaluation, and he has done that in several countries. So before proceeding to the presentation, okay, let me give a brief introduction of our speaker today. Professor Pedro Carneiro is now a professor of economics at the University College London, and also a research fellow at the Institute for Fiscal Studies, and also a research economist in the IFS Center for Microdata Methods and Practice. And his research interests include development economics, labor economics, the economics of education, and microeconometrics. And in the past, he has examined issues such as the returns to education, human capital policy, and labor regulation in developing countries. Professor Carneiro obtained both doctoral and master degree from the University of Chicago. And the topics that he is going to cover today will be one of his recent research on the effect of classroom rank, as you see on the screen, and it will be the evidence from the country of Ecuador. So the professor is going to speak maybe for around 15 minutes, and then to be followed by the Q&A. But in case you have any questions during the presentation, please do not hesitate to interrupt by using the raise hand button below. Okay, and so without further ado, okay, the floor is yours, Professor.
Thank you so much for inviting me and for such a nice introduction. So I'm going to talk about a paper on classroom rank, the impact of classroom rank, so being ranked high or low in your classroom, on your future learning. And this is a part of this is a paper. It's part of a series of papers we have, mainly Norbert Chadi and Yanu Kuruzawayu and myself, then with some other people, on a big project that took place in Ecuador, a big longitudinal study of learning in elementary schools in Ecuador. And so we have several papers on it, and this is one of them. And this specific one focuses on rank and what role might rank play for educational outcomes. And there's a few papers on this, and it's kind of an old question. And the emphasis is on this big fish, little pond idea. So how important is it to be the biggest fish in your pond? And one mechanism is probably through self-concept, in the case of school academic self-concept. So by being the biggest fish in your pond, by being the best student in your classroom, you become more confident, and that may induce more learning. It doesn't have to happen this way. Maybe top-ranked students may get complacent. For example, I am the best, I don't have to work so hard to be the best. And so that's not so emphasized usually. Usually the idea is that this thing is positive, being highly ranked, because it grows your confidence. And then, as I just said, there's a few papers on this. There's not that many, but there's a few. Although rank shows up in a lot of context, not just in education, but in terms of the importance of rank in education, there's these papers by Murphy and Reinhardt that look at English schools. Okay, so they look at the importance of being highly ranked in your school on future learning, and they do find a bit of an impact. Then they have another paper with data from maybe Texas, I forget, which shows some longer run outcomes. And then there's some other papers by Elsner and Eastfording. Okay, they have similar flavors. Okay, but so there's a few papers on this. What we do here is a little, I mean, it's going to be the same idea, but we will have a random assignment because we'll have an experiment in our paper. Students will be randomly assigned to classrooms. None of these papers have that. So you'll have to argue that rank has a causal impact on future learning or future outcomes through some other assumptions. And the other one is that we have really a lot of data throughout the whole elementary school, and we have some different outcomes. Okay, so let me get through it. Okay.
So
yeah,
Pedro, can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
Yes. I mean, at least for me, I always hate to use this GPA as the outcome of learning, right? Because we know that different classrooms use different scales and blah blah blah. Then we like to do standardized tests, but here these papers seem to point to something like, well, ranking may, I mean, if I understand it correctly, and which if it not, please correct me, it's like ranking may not reflect the cognitive ability of the student, but it might correlate it with confidence and other things that may be also important. And then if that's the case, then would it be necessary when we do this kind of thing in the future, when we run any estimation, should we control for this ranking at least? I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say.
I understand, but you said a few things. So I mean, in this paper, we use standardized testing, but anyway, rank reflects, it's correlated with a person's ability, obviously, because, if you're very low ability, you probably have lower rank. And what we say in this paper is that rank in itself may impact your social skills. Well, it doesn't need to be social skills. It may impact your confidence, for example. And so I'm not sure you have to control for rank. So it depends on the context. So I think if you have a paper on peer effects, for example, rank is a type of peer effect, and it may be important to control for rank. In some other settings, I don't know, if you're evaluating the impact of a intervention on learning, I don't think you have control for rank. The intervention may affect one's rank as it affects one's ability. So I think it depends on what you want to study. I mean, if it's something that affects rank, like peers or something, and you want to see the impact of that's something independent of rank, you may have to control for it. Otherwise, you won't. Yeah, you see, the impact of rank is not that big anyway. I mean, it's interesting, it's there. Okay, but
yeah. Well, I see. Thanks. I will look for to see the results.
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just for clarity, rank created from the examination score, right?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you'll see how we'll create rank. So just to tell you very quickly, so you don't get confused. So at the beginning of the year, in the beginning, the day one of the academic year, students come in to the classroom, but they already have some previous scores. And so we can use those to create rank. So it's going to be rank at the beginning of the year. When the students meet each other for the first time, we can rank them. Okay. And so we can see the impact of that rank on learning during that year. Okay. So rank is based on some test score, but it's from last year's test score, if you can put it that way.
Is it standardized test or it's just a classroom test?
No, it's standardized test. So we gave our own tests. So because in Ecuador, there's not so much testing. And so, yeah. So we design, not we, but we design our own tests and we give them our own tests every single year. Okay. So so it takes place in elementary school. In Ecuador, elementary school goes for 7 years. So the first year you call it kindergarten, but you can call it year 1. It doesn't matter. Called kindergarten in the US, they use this expression kindergarten, but that's year 1 of elementary school. So age 5, students enter elementary school in Ecuador, and then they stay there for 7 years, up to year 7. Okay, and in the US, they'd say up to year 6. Now, at the beginning of each grade, every year, so every school we study, we have, a national representative sample of schools. We have about 200 schools, but the schools are big enough to have at least 2 classrooms per school. Okay, and so in some schools they have 3 classrooms per grade, 4, 5. Okay, and so that's important to us because we want to randomly assign students across classrooms every single year. See, this study primarily was a study of classroom effects and teacher effects. So we have some other papers on it. Okay, so but here today we're going to use it to study rank. And so what happens because of random assignment, 2 students with the same level of ability, same test score last year, who are in the same school, they will end up with different classroom ranks, depending on whether they're assigned with a classroom with smart kids or not so smart kids. I mean, the differences will not be very big because it's random assignment, but there's always going to be some differences in the classroom composition a little bit, again, because of, some randomization error, right? So just, and so that's where the random variation in rank will come in. So I'll show you in a little bit. You'd imagine maybe it's too small. It's not that small, okay? Because classrooms have about 35 students or more. And so the classrooms are not so small. Sorry, they're not so big. Okay? It's not like 70 kids classroom. And so there's quite a bit of variation, even within the same school. 2 students with the same ability they can have quite different ranks. So then we're going to follow the students over time. They're randomly assigned every year. And so we can look a little bit at dynamics. We can look at impacts at different grades. And so our outcomes, all our outcomes comes from tests or measures collected by us. So there's nothing with administrative data, unfortunately. The reason is because in Ecuador, they don't give so much testing, so we didn't have much to go on. And so we'll have some cognitive tests, so in math and language. And we'll also have some data on executive function. And at the end of elementary school, we collect some social emotional skills. And every year, we have some data on the teacher perceptions of the students, okay? So.
Does students know their own rank?
Well, they can infer it, but it's very hard. They don't know the score and the test we give them. But in some sense, in the sense that if in your classroom, you know whether you are high or low, right? So what perception do you have? Do you have a perception of being a good student, not so good student? In that sense, they know their own rank, but they don't know the rank we give them. So, but that's not the most relevant one. In some sense, what matters is the rank as perceived by the student. So that's a really good point. And so whatever measure we have is not going to be the truly relevant measure, right? Because what we wanted to do probably is collect beliefs about the student's own self-perception and own rank, right? So, but when I went to school, I sort of have an idea where I was in the distribution. I mean, I don't have the grades, but the teachers give tests, right? And they grade the tests and they compliment the students. So after a few years, after a few months, you kind of have an idea, right, of how well you're doing in school.
Okay.
So we find that, so we have classroom rank measured in math and in language, and we can also have executive function. It's not so. But we find that the important classroom rank, it seems to have any impact, is in the one in math. Okay, so if at the beginning of a given grade you are at the high end of the ability distribution in terms of math in your grade, that ends up raising your end of grade achievement. So it has a positive impact on your learning in that grade. Okay, and so the impact is more important. I mean, it's not gigantic, but if anything, it's bigger in the early grades than in the later grades, and then we'll also see that it has dynamic impact. So being if you have a high rank in an early grade, that will lead you to have higher test scores in later grades. Okay, so the effects are sustained.
Yep.
And
So Pedro,
yeah,
can I think about this as the opposite of peer effect somehow? Or I don't know.
you could, but rank is a peer effect really, but it's the negative peer effect.
All right, so it's a negative peer effect. It's not the general peer effect that usually people think of a positive peer effect, right?
Yeah, exactly. So but it's also a peer effect, right? So
right.
If I'm randomly assigned to bad peers, I will have high rank. Okay. So it's a component of peer effect. So that's what I was saying. When should you really worry about this rank and so on? So if you're worried about peer effects, you may be worried, can I distinguish positive peer effects, negative peer effects, and so on, right? So, but T, that's really a good point. So in the paper, we have some estimates where we control for linear means. I mean, we have some interesting results on that. I mean, I don't think I have time to talk too much about them today, but you're exactly right. This is a type of peer effect, but it works in the opposite way than you usually think about.
Oh, okay. Well, great.
So,
just to clarify further on the point of the peer effect. So peer effect means normally if you are at lower rank in a good peer, then you should try to do more work to improve your test, right?
Yeah, this would be, for example, the typical peer effects. The typical peer effects, I don't think they work that way. But I mean, I don't know how they work, but I think many times people argue, if I'm at the lower end, I'm going to learn from the good students, right? So for example, and so that would be one type of positive peer effects. It can also work through the way you mentioned, but I think that's going to be more like rank, right? If I am lower rank, I want to work hard. Now, this is, I mean, that's what I'm saying in the first slide. So it turns out in our data, it works in the opposite way. So if I'm lower rank, in some sense, I become depressed or not very confident. So I either because I don't work as hard or for some other reason, maybe I work harder, but I'm kind of not confident. And so I end up learning less than the people who rank at a high level. But I think these questions are very good. I mean, you're perceiving that this is just one type of peer effect. So peer effects can work in many ways. And so we emphasize this specific mechanism. Okay, so today, but you're all thinking about it very well. So as I said in the paper, we have a model where we put linear means average ability of the students, okay, and see what happens. Or we can control for classroom fixed effects, that sort of control for the average ability of students in your classroom, and see what happens if you have high rank or low rank. Okay.
Does teacher put more effort on student with higher rank and lower effort to student with lower rank, vice versa?
Yeah, that's a good question. We don't know, but that's I mean, again, you're asking this question because I mean, I imagine perhaps you perceive this to be true. It could happen, right? Some teachers compensate and they make a big effort on the lower ranked students. Some teachers, they get enthusiastic about high ranked students. So you're absolutely right. So I've been emphasizing the mechanism of confidence, but it doesn't have to be confidence. It could be that the only thing that happens is that the teacher puts more effort in a highly ranked student. That's a good point. And we'll have, okay, we didn't look too much at mechanisms, but we have a little bit on that. Mm-hmm. And you'll see we have some data that teachers actually perceive. They know who are the highly ranked students. They do know. And so it's perfectly possible. I mean, at some point in the paper, we had something that suggested that was the case, was not completely convincing, but I think that's really, a really important mechanism. And as I told you, we had some suggestive evidence in the paper at some point that this could be true. Yeah. I mean, we know they perceive students to be good students if they effectively highly ranked. And the question is whether they act more on them. Okay, so.
Great, thank you.
Okay. And then we also find that classroom rank improves executive function, improves happiness in the classroom. We only have measures of classroom in the first grade, or sorry, in year 2, sorry. And then in response to your question, it also improves teachers' perceptions of student ability. Okay. So again, just to be clear, in response to your question, suppose you have 2 students of the same ability, and one goes to one classroom where he's highly ranked, and one goes to a classroom where his rank is low, the teachers will perceive them differently. Okay. So the teachers will perceive the student, even though they have the same ability, the teachers will perceive the student who went to the classroom where he has high rank to be a better student. Okay. Okay. So we have a big experiment, 202 schools over 7 years. And as I told you, the cohorts of students are randomly assigned to classrooms in each year. Now we have a little bit of turnover, like in any elementary school. Some students move out, they move to another city and so on. So they leave the school, and some students come in because they just arrived in the city in 3rd grade, and they have to come into the school. These are all state schools, right? So there's a bit of turnover, but that's normal. And so because we have random assignment, you get rid of sorting, and so that's good. And we really have random assignments because we're very careful about that. And then we have some tests, they all work well. Now, I told you that, but it's random assignments within school. So is it really true that 2 students with the same ability can have really different ranks? And because the classrooms are not so big, yes, they can. Okay, so this is down here is kind of normalized student ability within school. And so the way to think about this picture is, okay, so let's take 2 students with the same level of ability in the same school. So how wide can be the difference in their ranks? And so, for example, a student with ability 0, doesn't matter what 0 means, some place in the mean. Now, they're going to have rank typically in the 50th percentile. So the median rank will be in the 50th percentile. Okay, that's classroom rank, where it goes from 0 to 1. But, if you're lucky, you can go up to the 60th, above 60th percentile. And then if you're very unlucky, so you end up in a classroom with very good students, your rank can be as low as 0.3, okay? So that's going to be the extremes, the 5th and 95th percentile of this distribution. And so there's some variation within schools, okay? So if you take percentiles 25 and 75, for these guys would be like, I can't see it very well. So 0.55 and maybe it's below 0.4. So you see, so there is a bunch of, it says here, for example, within the 10th percentile of the national rank, so of some national ability rank, classroom rank varies between 0.32 and 0.64. So you get pretty wide variation. That's why we have enough variation to do this paper, okay? So we collect math and language every grade, and we have executive function up to 4th grade. That's year 5 of elementary school. Okay, so I'm sorry, it depends where you give these papers, but so we have executive function for 5 years, and we have math and language for 7 years. Okay, so the reason we don't have executive function for 7 years is we ran out of money. Then we have yearly teachers assessments, and so teachers, they tell us who are the top 5 students in terms of learning achievement, and who are the bottom 5 students in terms of learning achievement in that classroom and in that year. And so we ask the teachers for these assessments at the end of the year, after they've seen the students for the whole year, okay? And then not only they tell us the top 5, they also rank us, okay? These are the top 5, but T is really the top dog in our classroom, okay? So it's not only the top 5, it's the top 1. Okay. Now, at the end of 1st grade, which is year 2, we also have some data on students' happiness. And at the end of elementary school, we have this depression, self-esteem, growth mindset, and greed. Okay. So just to have you have an idea of that type of population. In this Ecuador, I don't know how well you know Ecuador, is middle income country, kind of in the poor side. So it's not like Brazil or Argentina, it's poorer than those countries in Latin America. So these are the age of the kids in months when they enter school is 60 months or about 5 years. Half of them are female, so there's nothing weird about our sample. The thing I want to emphasize, starts here. So we gave them this Peabody Picture Vocabulary Test. It's called TVIP because it's the Spanish version. Okay, and their score is 83.3. So what does that mean? Well, the test is normalized to be mean 100, standard deviation 15. I think the population is Mexico and Puerto Rico, I forget. So some higher income country. And so they are 1 standard deviation below those guys. So they don't do so well at the beginning of elementary school in terms of their vocabulary. On average, their parents are about 8.5 years of schooling. They're kind of between 30 and 34. And they're kind of poor. So the proportion of households with some pipe water in their homes is 83%, and those who have a flush toilet, it's only 46%. Okay, so these are teacher characteristics. So I can tell you about class size first. Is these classrooms, I don't know how they are in Thailand, but relatively to Europe and the US, they're very big for elementary school. So we have 36 kids per classroom. I mean, they're not like in some places in Africa. We have, where you have 50, 60 students, but teachers on average have 18 years of experience. 80% are 10 years. Okay, so most of them are females. Okay, so that's kind of how the data looks like. All right, so classroom rank, we use the last year's test. Okay, so you use the previous test to tell us what is the student ability. And then they enter a school, they enter a grade, and we randomly assign them to classrooms. And so we know who are their peers. And so we know based on the T-1 achievement, and we know the rank in that grade. Okay, that's how you measure it. And so that's basically it. Okay, now we're going to start. I mean, we could start our paper with the first year elementary school. The test we have for a T-1 is just this Peabody picture. Oh, I forgot to close the door. Give me 1 second. Sorry, people are starting to come in. So, but so for the first year elementary school, we don't have a good, before elementary school test because we just gave this PPVT. So we don't. I mean, we could use it to compute rank, but since our paper is really focused on ranking math, I mean, we have some results for math and ranking language. That's not as important for future achievement. And so we needed a math test. So we can only start this paper in the year 2 of elementary school because the first year we give the math test is at the end of year 1. Okay, that's just a small detail. Okay, so then our model works like this. YISCT is the student's math performance. Can also be language. I mean, it's some outcome. Okay, at the end of grade T, in school S and classroom C. Okay. And so we could, this outcome, we could define it in many ways. It turns out in this literature, people always do it some national rank. Okay, so where do you rank in the national test score distribution? But we don't have to do it. Our results are not sensitive to that. We could do standardized scores or grade equivalents or whatever. Okay. Now, classroom rank is our measure of classroom rank. It goes from 0 to 1. It could go, it's a percentile rank. So it's not really in a classroom with 30. It's not like you're the first or the third year student. It's the percentile rank. Again, this is kind of typical. And then it's measured at the beginning of grade T. And then we just estimate a simple regression. So the idea is, I mean, this is how we implement it. But the idea is you'd like to estimate conditional means, right? We'd like to estimate E of Y given conditional rank and YT-1 and school dummy or school identifier, right? So now the way you implement it is You put the school fixed effect, that's additive, and you put the polynomial. I mean, some flexible function of previous rank. Again, that's the typical way to do it. But, you know, in principle, if you had infinite data, you do something more non-parametric. So it could be some specification here, right? So maybe the school effect is not additive. Maybe the polynomial, we don't quite know what it is exactly when we put the cubic here, but in lag test score, but maybe it's not exactly, maybe there's an interaction and so on, right? So, but anyway, so we should be okay, you know, should be approximately right, and then we explore randomly assigned rank over here, okay? Okay. Then we can estimate also the medium-term impacts, so in the future. So we just look at outcomes in T plus L, and then the rest of the right-hand side is the same. So we can change the outcome, basically, okay, and estimate this regression. So we'll see the impact of classroom rank in grade 1 on learning in grade 5, for example. Okay, that's going to be the reduced form impact, so we'll talk about what it means, okay? And then, okay, so I mean, actually, we'll talk about it right now. So why would say classroom rank in grade 1 have an impact on student outcomes in grade 5, for example? Well, one reason could be this virtuous cycle. Well, I start with a high rank, I learn a lot. That leads me to have a high rank in grade 2. Oh, that leads me to learn even more, right? Oh, that leads me to have a high rank in grade 3 and so on. So that's a virtuous cycle. Or maybe there's something else, right? So I just get more confident over and above what I just told you. I just get more confident, or I get, you know, leadership skills or whatever, and that also affects future learning. So we'll have something to say about these two explanations. Okay, yeah. So this comes later. So okay, then we'll have some executive function, teacher perceptions, but since I don't have too much more time, so let me show you some results. Okay, so this is the impacts of classroom rank in math on math achievement. Okay, and so we have many, we have a big table. Why? Because, I mean, here we pulled the data, because otherwise we'd have too many coefficients to show you. Okay, remember I have 7 grades, but I'm not using the first grade. So I have 6 grades I'm looking at. So if I wanted the contemporaneous impacts of rank, so the impacts of rank at the beginning of year on learning at the end of year, I should have like 6 coefficients. So here I only have 3, because I pull first and years 2 and 3. I know we call it first and second grades, then the following 2 grades and the following 2 grades. But it's just to minimize space. Okay, so if you go to the paper, we can see everything grade by grade. Okay, and then this is the lags of the outcome. So lag 0 means it's contemporaneous, so it's the impact of beginning of year rank on end of year learning. And then 1 means impact of beginning of year rank in grade T on learning in grade T plus 1, grade 3 plus 2, T plus 3, T plus 4. Okay, and so the way you read this coefficient, for example, 0.042 means, okay, if my classroom rank goes from 0 to 1. Okay, so if I go from the bottom of the class to the top of the class, right? Because it's from 0 to 1 means from 0 to 100. Okay, so then my national rank goes up by 4 percentile. Okay, so 0.04. So you see, it's not a really big effect, but it is some. It's been 4 percentiles in them. In a distribution is not. It's not nothing, but it's not very big. Okay, but it's interesting. It does have an impact. Okay, so now these are the contemporaneous impacts. Okay, and so you'll see that the impacts are bigger in the earlier grades, in the middle grades, than in the later grades. In the later grades, we don't find any contemporaneous impact of classroom rank, beginning of your classroom rank on end of your learning. Okay? And so other people find this as well, but usually they only have data for 3rd grade. For example, in the US, that's when testing starts. For the UK, they do rank at the end of elementary school on secondary learning. So it's kind of different. Here you can see impacts over time. Now, of course, for later grades, you cannot follow students because we only have data up to the end of elementary school. So that's why there's some blank cells here. But for the early grades, we can follow up to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 lags. Okay, so you see that this is the contemporaneous impact, but the impact that I have on scores next year is bigger. Then it's bigger, even bigger, even bigger. So we were really surprised. I mean, how can these impacts increase over time? Okay, and so it could be this virtual cycle that I just described. Now and these actually you can reject it, they're the same over time. These ones decline over time, but we can't reject they're the same. Okay. And so what's going on? Okay, so what we did is we tried to assess to what extent is this explanation involving this virtual cycle, which again is, if I have a high rank today, I learn more. So I have a high rank tomorrow, so then I learn more. Have a high rank 2 days from, 2 years from now, I learn more. Okay, so there's a virtual cycle. Can this account for these impacts growing so much over time? Okay, so we can just simulate that. Now, if you simulate, you kind of get this line over here. And then it's not enough, okay? I mean, you see it goes down because there's also some depreciation of skills every year, as in any dynamic model. I mean, we estimate it. So we don't remember everything. Okay, so from the 1 year to the next, I mean, you forget a little bit. And so even though, you're still going to be high rank next year, it's still going to be some depreciation. And so this is the red line over here. That's kind of what we find. So this virtual cycle model can't really explain what you've seen in the data. It has to be something else. Okay, some kids are becoming leaders in their classrooms, they're getting leadership skills, are they super confident and so on. And it has to be something along those lines. Or it could be that the teachers, but I don't think, it could be the teachers. It could be the teachers always given to be very good. I don't know. Okay, but it has to be, yeah, go ahead.
Right, but somehow it doesn't happen to the 5th grade and 6th grade, right?
Not contemporaneous, no.
Which the teacher might be easier to observe ability at the older age. I guess it's just quite normal to assume that, because it's easier to measure and then observe that. So anyway, so let me ask another question. So I think the model is symmetric in this way. So we don't know if this is because a good student benefit or actually the lower rank actually worse off, right? I mean, get worse. Right. So we cannot distinguish those two, I guess.
Oh, not the way we did it, but we could. But when we try to see if the impacts were different at the high ranks or at the low ranks, right?
So I mean, I'm asking this because I'm thinking about policy, right? I mean, should we try to how should we form a classroom to help? I mean, who we're going to help or who's going to benefit is stuff like that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. We didn't get, when we try to answer your question, because this model, as you say, is symmetric, is linear. You didn't have to be, right? So if you think about this again, non-parametrically, all I have to, I want to compare 2 students with the same ability and with different ranks. And so they could have they could be at the top or the bottom of the distribution, right? And so, this idea, I could always do that if I have more data. So it turns out when you try to do it, we didn't get anything very informative. The standard errors were bigger and so on. But I think it's a really good point. So is it really the good students that pull ahead, or the bad students, or the low rank students that stay behind? But it's maybe we should go back and investigate that more. Yeah, because we have not done that for a while. Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah. Okay, so these are impacts of rank on executive function. I mean, contemporaneous impacts, they're imprecise. They're positive, but they're imprecise. There's some weird big impacts in the next grade, so I don't know how much to, it's not believe this. I mean, you can believe this, it's in the data, but how much to value this? I mean, it doesn't seem to have any big impact. There's one odd coefficient over here, so I'm not going to put too much, emphasis on these results. I think they're mainly imprecise. And then these are impacts of classroom rank on the probability that the teacher puts you in the top 5 of your classroom, and it does, as you'd expect, it affects it. And contrary to what T was saying, actually, I forgot about the results. It is as important for teachers' perceptions in early grades and in later grades. So it's not really true that rank correlates more with whether you are ranked highly by the teacher or not. So and that's kind of interesting. So the other thing that's interesting, kind of, these effects are not as persistent. So I've forgotten about this. Okay. So, but at least contemporaneously, if you are ranked highly at the beginning of the grade, your teacher puts you at the top. Okay, so or the teacher perceives you to be at the top of the classroom distribution. The opposite also happens, at the bottom. Okay. And so I'm not going to show you this, but we have some at the end of grade 2. I know I call it first grade, with year 2. We have some questions on child happiness, how well you feel in school, are you happy in school, do you like learning, and so on. And it turns out that if a student, classroom rank affects child happiness. And so that could be another mechanism. And maybe happiness is correlated with confidence, right? So, but we have a little bit of suggestive evidence that this channel could, be playing a role. And then the other channel I've been emphasizing, which is, maybe it improves confidence and effort and grit and leadership. We don't see impacts of classroom rank either in the short run and the long run on non-cognitive skills at the end of 6th grade. So we were hoping, if we could emphasize the explanation, we're going to see this at the end, but we don't. So maybe this is not a good explanation. Yeah.
So, Pedro?
Yeah.
So what kind of measure do you use for non-cognitive skills?
Yeah, so let me see if I have it here.
So I mean, I use this kind of BPI. I mean,
no, we didn't use BPI here for behavior. We use really so
the self-esteem,
these 4 measures. So these not measures of behavior. It's measures of depression. It's a depression scale. I mean, the students, when they take this, they're 12. Okay. Then there's
this is a self-report by students or parents or teacher report?
No, there's no self-report by students.
I see.
So, but it's not BPI. It's this stuff here. Okay.
So how do you worry about measurement errors in these? Because it's a self-report. So I mean.
Yeah, yes. So we try to. We worry about measurement error, but it's on the left-hand side, right? So it's not going to bias our estimates if it's random measurement error, but it could make them very noisy. So maybe that's what's going on. Now the measures are not garbage in the sense they're correlated with each other. Okay, so these 4 measures are correlated. So there's some signal to it, and they're correlated with other things. So they're correlated with socioeconomic gradients. They're correlated with some test scores. Okay, so. But it's a good question. We always have to worry about some measurement error here. And so it may be that they're just too noisy, but they do have some
I faced this, I couldn't distinguish either, but I faced a similar problem. We measure this thing, we use BPI, we use SDQ. Most of the time it's not really significant in anything that we try to look for. Maybe it doesn't have any effect, or maybe it's because it's noisy. That's why it's kind of not.
Yeah, I know. So you do the best you can, but there's some. Heckman has been working on these things a long time. You can try to, get better signal by using many measures and getting factors and so on. I'm sure you know that, right? So
yeah.
So that's the best people do, right? So and then either collect them many years, and then you have to assume they don't vary from year to year, right? So yeah. So but. Anyway, there's some diagnostics that you can do when you do these factor models of how much signal there is in your data, right? So, and that will give you an idea of how good your measures really are, right? So, yeah.
Right.
But that's a really
Thank you.
good point. Yeah. Okay, and I think I'm kind of out of time, and so, but I said most of the, I mean, I've talked about most of the results, not in very big detail. There's more stuff in the paper, but basically we study the impact of classroom rank in math, and I didn't show you the results for language because I don't have time. But classroom rank in language does not have an impact in the short run or in the medium run. Okay. On future learning. Okay. Classroom rank in math, it affects future learning in math, and it also affects future learning in language. So I think it could be through this, because of that result, it could be through this, you become confident. It may also be that maybe at the early grades, as T was saying, maybe it's easier to, perceive that you are good at math, and that language maybe it's not so, it doesn't distinguish yourself so much, right? All kids talk, they're kind of learning how to read the same. I don't know. So maybe you don't perceive it as much. This could be one explanation for the classroom rank in math to be more important than the classroom rank in language. And so there's impacts in the short run, and they're sustained over time. And so that sort of unexpected to us, although these guys are in Texas, they do find long-term impacts of rank in elementary school on earnings, which for me is kind of really, remarkable. But they do argue that they are impacts of classroom rank in elementary school on earnings. So that's incredible. And so we do find sustained impacts of early grades rank. So maybe that's not so surprising then, because for some reason, again, could be, confidence, motivation, these effects persist. Okay, so thank you. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll give you more detail. Yeah.
Just one clarification. So for each child, they were randomly assigned to different rank only once, and then you follow them, or for like different class, they reassign again. So would it possible that they get like high rank at the first grade, but when they got randomly assigned again to lower grade, is that possible?
It's perfectly possible. It's perfectly possible. So in some sense, this is not the most natural environment. Maybe that's what kind you were hinting at, because you don't, in some countries, you stay with your classroom peers for the whole elementary school cycle, right? In our case, you shuffled all the time. And so that means just disruption. One form of disruption is that your rank is changing all the time. So you're absolutely right. Your rank is changing all the time. So now next year's rank is going to be orthogonal to this year's rank, right? So because of the random assignment. So that's good for econometrics, but maybe it's not so good for, our sample is representative, but maybe it's not representative of what happens in typical schools. It depends. I don't know what happens in Thailand. Do you get reshuffled? So it depends on I think in the US, you get kind of reshuffled, not that random, but you kind of get reshuffled. You get different peers every year. Some peers are common, some peers are different. That also happens in our setting because there's only so many students in each school, right? So even though you randomly assign again, half the, on average, half the students in your new grade, your new classroom, new grade, you saw them last year, right? So, but I should have answered more quickly. The answer is yes, you are right. Yes.
So you could have like two kids who are in the similar higher ranks in the first year, have a high score, and then for the second year, these two split. One still go to the high rank, the other one go to the lower rank class.
Yeah,
so
that's a good idea. Yeah, we didn't. I see. Maybe you asking. We could have investigated whether the pass, right? So if you always high rank, whether it's if you're moving around, maybe always low rank, right? Whether there's some complementarities, for example, or not. Or, in our model, these ranks in different grades are just perfect substitutes, right? Yeah, we try to do it, at the beginning of the project. Yeah, kind of hopeless, unfortunately. So, because, it was really noisy. you get like big and small coefficients, super positive, super negative. So we sort of gave up. We just estimated a simpler additive model. But your question is very important. Again, this may be another source of misspecification in our model. We assume all these ranks are perfect substitutes. Now, since the impacts are not so big, maybe it's not. That's why we didn't find any big complementarities or diminishing returns or whatever, right? As you are kind of hinting at, but I can't say. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah.
So just for clarity, so the treatment and control we have here is assigning a rank or not assigning a rank, right?
No, it's high rank. Everybody is assigned a rank.
Okay.
But you can have, it's not really treatment and control. The treatment is the rank you get, but it's just, it goes from 0 to 100. And it's randomly assigned within school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so suppose you think of, 100 treatments or high treatment, low treatment. Even it's kind of like a dosage study, right? So I'm not sure if I'm making sense. So many, some randomized controlled trials in medicine, they don't just have treatment control there, no drug, low dose, high dose, for example. Right, so this kind of thing.
Yep, Pedro. Should I imagine to take this to the policy, for example? In general, some school or some country would love to have, even within a school, you're going to have a very good class and a low class. So how should I imply from this research to those, or maybe I shouldn't yet?
I think for policy, it's not so clear what comes out from the study directly. It tells you that there's something about, or it suggests there's something about student motivation and self-concept that it's important for their learning. And so if I can promote that, it doesn't tell you directly, but that's the most standard mechanism that's emphasized. If I can promote it somehow, here it's promoted through class and rank. But if I can promote motivation somehow, or confidence, students will learn more. That's kind of maybe the most important lesson for policy. It's a little bit indirect. Now, the more direct lessons for policy are a little tricky, right? So if you tell me rank is good, I cannot give high rank to everybody, right? Everybody, somebody has to be at the bottom, right? So now it depends who I value. Now, if I really value the bottom students, maybe I don't want to give them, maybe tracking is good for them, because I know the bottom students are always going to be at the bottom, but some other students may be better off. But that's if I worry about the bottom students, because if I have tracking, I'm going to have good students with low rank. So it's going to be bad for them, right? So I don't think it's so clear. It helps you think about the trade-offs of tracking a little more, right? These things about rank show up also in some, these studies that look at effects of elite schools on learning, on future outcomes. Usually they use some RD design, because the elite schools, they're very selective. So usually there's a score, right? And they say, okay, if you score above 500, you get into whatever. I don't know what is the most selective school in Bangkok, but say Eton or whatever. And so if you score 499, you don't, okay? And so then they look at the impacts of the guy who scored 500 versus 499, because the guy who scored 500, they got into the elite school. So, but on the other hand, if I score 500, I'm going to be the worst student in the elite school, right? So I may have really bad, experience in the elite school. I may be better off not going to the elite school and being the best student in the non-elite school. And so I think it has some impact. As we say, the impacts of rank are not really gigantic, but it can have some implications for those papers as well.
So it seems that each individual, like a parent, can benefit from this conclusion more than a policy.
Yeah, exactly. A parent, exactly. For a parent, but parents think about it that way. I don't know how they think about it in Thailand, but I know in the US they think about it, they think about that for sports for sure, right? Because do I want to have my kid in a good football team, but he always on the bench, or being go to the worst football team and then play all the time. And it's kind of the same idea, right? So, but that's kind of more, but they also think about, even the stuff we talk about here, rank, maybe I'm going to move to a, classroom that's not as good because it's not going to be so frustrated and so on. It could be just because the learning is more geared toward you, but also it could be because you're more confident. So I think parents think about this naturally.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not totally sure in Thailand, but it might be the opposite. Many parents try very hard to get kids into very good classroom and good schools, but yeah, who knows if they have perfect information though.
No, but I think again, the peer effects that I forget who was emphasizing it before, they could overturn the impacts of rank, right? So maybe I get depressed because
or maybe in developing country, networking is so important. So
yeah, exactly. Well, that's a form of peer effect. Not only developing country, meaning rich countries. If you look at the, government in the UK, right, or the city executives, they all come from very small set of schools. And they all not, it's not that they're all brilliant students, right? So, but through the networking clearly plays a big role.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
we have
thank you.
more question from Kun Anat.
Yes,
there's a person there with, oh yeah, go ahead.
do you hear us? Do you hear me?
Yeah, very well.
Okay, I want to ask some question regarding like a teacher or student specific characteristic, which I think teacher characteristic may be controlled by, I don't know, classroom fixed effect, but regarding the student characteristic, maybe the parents' income, parents' education will affect the like learning. How do you distinguish this effect from the classroom a bit, from the classroom rank? Thank you.
Oh, okay, that's a good point. So our design is the following. We are going to compare two students with the same ability. Okay, they will have exactly the same ability, and they go to the same school. Is that they were randomly assigned to different classrooms. Okay, so what affects their classroom rank is not going to be their parents or even their own ability. It's going to be the random assignment. Okay, I mean, it's going to be their ability, but since I'm controlling for ability, I'm comparing just two students with ability score, whatever, 25. Okay, the only reason they have different classroom rank is because they were randomly assigned to different classrooms. So in that sense, classroom rank will be orthogonal to parental income. Now you can control for parental income. Now I think there could be one reason though to control for parental income, and then maybe that's what you're thinking about is, remember, if I go back in my slides a little bit. I mean, I don't implement this perfectly. I implement this with the parametric model just because I don't have infinite data. And so, as I told you, I have additive model and school fixed effects, and then you put some polynomial in this G function. And so, actually, I have some hint. I'm not going to tell you too much about it today, but I have some hint that actually this model is misspecified. Whatever I'm doing to control for national rank is not doing enough. And so there may be some role for family income just because this model is misspecified. So actually in the revision of the paper, we have some specifications where we could do control for family income. We only measure it once at the beginning of elementary school. But that's the only place it could matter, is because this G function is misspecified. So I want to control for more stuff. But if this G function was really well specified, and it was really like non-parametric regression of outcome on classroom rank, national rank, and school identifier, I would not have any role for the family income, right? Because classroom rank should be orthogonal to it. Yeah. But that's a good question.
Thank you so much.
I have one question about confidence that you mentioned. It seems for me, maybe I missed some point, but I feel like it's one possible explanation, but not the only one.
No.
And I would like to ask, what do you think, would it be necessary to also measure, somehow measure confidence or motivation through some measurements?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know. So this is kind of, I have to come up with, so I have to come up with a story, right? So that's the most typical story in the literature. I mean, there's some psychologists, when they started looking at rank, was about academic self-concept. But you're absolutely right. I don't know if it's that mechanism or some other mechanism. Some people emphasize teachers and so on. I don't really know. And so now I have a little bit of measures, but as I told you, I don't have much. So the only one I have during elementary school that's effective is this tripod. I don't know if any of you have given this battery in Thailand, but it's called tripod. And it's basically, I forget, it's 12, 13 questions about the experience of students in elementary school. So it's not really about confidence, although I guess I could have asked about self-esteem. And then, I mean, I could have, I'm sure there's some batteries that ask about self-esteem. I could ask about beliefs. I mean, some could ask about how, where do you rank in the classroom? I mean, these are good questions. I didn't do that. We didn't do that. I mean, we were not planning to write a classroom rank paper, actually, when we started designing this study. I mean, so we wrote it, but it was interesting. But so we didn't design the questionnaire for this paper, unfortunately. I mean, we could have asked more questions about motivation, perception, beliefs about your rank, effort, and so on. And so so we have a little bit of self-esteem, and we have a little bit of grit. Grit is kind of belief that you can make it, and so on. We have that at the end of elementary school, but that we didn't see any impacts on that. And then we gave the tripod in year 2. And as I told you a little bit before, I mean, I can go over the questions. I don't remember all of them, but are you happy in school? Are you learning in school? Do you get along with your peers? Do you like your teacher? Do you like math? Is there anything that's really troubling? So it's about 12 questions, and the idea is that they measure how well the students feel in school, how engaged they are with learning, and so on. So, and then we do see some impacts in the early grades of classroom rank on those measures. And so that was kind of suggestive that this could be one channel. I mean, they feel happier in school. I don't know if they feel more confident, but that's kind of how we interpret that. They feel happier in school. They feel that they're learning and so on. They're not frustrated.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we still have time left. Any more questions for Professor?
No, just curious on the policies. If we believe that like confidence will boost some learnings or happiness, so shall we actually like try to rank children in other skills? Because if you rank in math, someone's gonna be bad in math, not so good, but they may be good in other things. Like, shall you try to rank children in readings, in sports, in other things? Will that generally help?
That's a good point. So I mean, I don't know, if you go to the US, you always say good job to everything, and everybody is really good at that. And I think they're trying to promote confidence. And so, yeah, in some sense, there's always something where you try to be the first, right? So, I mean, I think that makes sense. Again, this is not kind of, really big impact, right? So I think you should worry about other stuff first, but, you could, and again, and there's also, it impacts at the average. Could be some students are really frustrated. And for some other students, this doesn't matter at all, but you're right. People think about that. And so, yes, I think it's, I think it could be a consequence, or something to think about is, should we, let's not just have the rank in math, let's have the other ranks. mean, it will dilute the impact of rank though for some kids. So I don't know. These things of rank, I don't think it's good policies that comes out of it. Just because if you do something to help some kids, some other kids are hurt. So whether the impact of rank is positive or negative, right? So now if it's confidence, yes, you can promote the confidence of everybody, but it doesn't have to be through rank. I think through rank is kind of zero-sum game, right? So yeah.
Oh, should I see it differently? Then maybe we should try to find some intervention that finally makes sure rank doesn't matter.
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
Because it shouldn't matter, right? In some sense.
Oh, rank shouldn't matter in the sense, if people are confident enough, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, if it's purely just human capital, skill, accumulate skill, and then stuff like that.
Yeah, rank here matters. I don't know if it's rank matters in itself. It's through some other thing, right? Rank should not matter in itself, right? So yeah, so if I can affect,
it's more like a signal distortion somehow, which I don't know what that is, but
yes, exactly. Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Thank you.
Peter, what?
Just a quick question. So do you observe that rank matters to a different extent depending on students' ability, or like have you done any exercise dividing students?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think somebody asked something with the same flavor. We tried to see if the rank matters more at the top or at the bottom of the ability distribution. So the other question is maybe lower ranks matter more than high ranks. So it was slightly different. You're right. So your question is different, right? So does rank interact with student ability? And we did a little bit with, again, became very noisy, unfortunately. So we kind of dropped that specification. So the answer is I can't really say. It could matter more, but I don't have anything useful to say about that question, unfortunately.
And maybe just another quick question. So if you put rank into a broader picture, like if you also consider some other measures. So do you think rank is like it seems to me that rank is not the first order importance in determining the student performance, right?
Not at all.
Right.
But it's not first order importance. So it's more like, I'm interested in this question for two reasons. One is because of peer effect, right? This is a sort of peer effect. It's a quirky peer effect, but it is. The other one is maybe rank tells us about, it's what you've been all emphasizing about something else that's changing in the student, their confidence and their motivation. So it's not the first order thing, okay? But it could, you should focus on other stuff. Although we never know about what to focus in schools, right? So, because it's true that teachers matter, but it's not that they change your life or whatever. And so it's hard to find stuff in schools that really affects learning too much. So, but you're absolutely right. I don't think this is the first order thing people should look at. But it was an interesting. It still makes an interesting point, but I'm not going to defend it too much in that sense. I don't think it's the first order thing. Also, again, in terms of policy, it's not going to be. It doesn't even have like direct policy implications, right? It's kind of a quirky thing. So I think it's interesting as a signal of something else that's happening, inside the student, promoting his or her learning. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
I have one question. I remember from my childhood that when I went to school, there is a king class that student is have high ability, and a queen class that student has lower ability, and another ordinary class. So classroom quality is heterogeneous in this sense. So
yeah.
So how? So what could we say about the quality of classroom in Ecuador in this experiment?
Oh, that's a different paper. So, but you're describing like tracking, but in Ecuador there's no tracking. But yes, we investigated the impact of classroom quality, and classroom quality is all together, right? Is the peers plus the teacher, and that does have an impact on learning, right? So if you're randomly assigned to a good classroom, you learn more. But those impacts are kind of the same size as in the US. They're not gigantic, right? So typically in the US, if you look at teacher quality estimates, if you're randomly assigned to a teacher that's 1 standard deviation better, you have like 0.1 standard deviations more learning. And if classroom quality is a little bit bigger, maybe 12, 0.13, but they're not very big on learning, although now Raj Chetty argues that you have long-term impacts. Even though you don't see big impacts on learning, you still have impacts on earnings, 30 years later. So it seems that classroom quality is important, even in a very long run, okay? But again, I don't think the estimates are really big, but they are positive for sure. And it's surprisingly, they sustained to the labor market. So whether you are assigned to a good classroom or a bad classroom in elementary school does have an impact on your earnings, like 30 years later. In Ecuador, we find stuff that's similar to the US, okay, at least in the short run. We don't have any long run follow-up, but yeah.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Yeah, I have some question.
Sure.
Is it possible that the result you found will vary across the different type of school, like public, private, or charter? And what do you think of this, especially in context of this developing country like Thailand?
Yes, I think it could vary. I mean, some schools, it doesn't even have to be type of school, even some unobserved type, some schools may promote rank very much. They maybe give a lot of prize to the best student, and then, honors, whatever, boards and so on. And so in those schools, rank will be more salient, and some other schools will be less salient, for example. So I think it may well vary across schools. Also, in some schools, there's some more stable population. So you get stuck with your rank for the whole, entire 6 years, and you get really depressed with it. And some other schools that somebody was saying there's lots of turnover, people coming in and out, and so your rank moves around more, right? So it's not going to affect you as much. But I think so. I think it's reasonable that it does affect you. Now, I don't know when sometimes in developing countries, sometimes we have bigger classrooms and so on. I don't know, where will rank be more important in, bigger settings or smaller settings? Maybe, I guess at the top, it could be more important, right? So if I'm the best of 100 versus the best of 10, I may feel more like the best. Although at the bottom, I guess it will work in the same way, but yeah, I have nothing really useful to say about that, but I think it's very reasonable to vary across schools. In terms of developing country, it depends. It's like what I think T was saying before, or you try to, in Thailand, you always try to go for the best, and you emphasize to be the best. That doesn't happen in other settings, right? So even developing countries, they vary a lot, right? In what their culture or their norms emphasize for the kids. So sorry, I don't have a much better answer than that.
That's useful enough. Thank you so much.
Atanti, would like to add any more questions?
Oh, no. I think it's very interesting.
Well, it was great to have all your comments. I'm going to do some more things in our paper in response to them. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, and thank you, Pedro, for giving us a very interesting talk.
Oh,
And
it was really a pleasure.
May I add a little?
Yeah.
Maybe about Thailand, or so maybe the rank is very is more salient here, not only because school gives some honors or something, but also because of the parents that they, yeah, at least in my childhood. So in my environment, I see some friends whose parents are very keen on good ranks, and some, like my parents, they didn't really care. So turns out it turns out yeah, so maybe if you want to explore more, I don't know, just
Yeah, it's a good
not
idea.
only school environment, but also
Family, that's what they kind of was trying to say. So exactly, I think you're absolutely right. So it depends on the country, you know, the norms of the parents and so on, right? So whether this rank is going to be more or less important. Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
thank
So
you so
I
much.
think, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be important in Thailand and some other East Asian countries, right? More than in some other places, right? So
yeah,
and especially if you go to a private school, if you pay a lot of money and so on, right? You better be the best or whatever, right? So if you're not
yeah, but
paying
not
for it-
everyone can be the best, right? Because
I know,
That's the problem.
exactly.
Well, any other
Okay.
questions? Okay.
Okay. If not, I think, yeah, we have had quite a very lively discussions and Q&A like along the presentation already. So yeah, as Achanti has already said, yeah, thank you very much, Pedro, for sharing your interesting work. Yes, and also thanks as well for the audience for joining us, and yeah, we will keep you updated for any upcoming events. Ajanti, would like to have any last words?
Well, thank you, Pedro, and thank you, everyone. It's a very interesting talk, and hope to see you in London at some point, Pedro.
Of course. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I think it's time to say goodbye for today. Have a good morning.
Bye-bye. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.